Well, it's pretty exciting to have this guest come on board. She has made so many great TV and films that you would definitely recognise. But now she's making the transition to VR in a huge way, with two major pieces which featured at Sundance New Frontier, which is a great program run by the Sundance Film Festival, where they do all sorts of great experimental filmmaking and creative labs workshops there. The first one is called The Party and the Perspective Chapter. Oh, sorry, Chapter 1 is called The Party and Perspective. Chapter 2 is called Misdemeanor. Please put your hands together for Rose Troche. And I believe we're going to play a little film before she comes on.
Okay.
I would love to say that since I was 6 years old, I wanted to be a filmmaker. But you have to understand how unrealistic that would have been for me. I think it has a lot to do with being Puerto Rican, because women are like, you can be a caretaker, you can be an educator. My parents' dream for me was for me to become a nurse and have 20 kids. Oh, my dad still says, my dad asked me what I do. I'm like, I make films. And he goes, what? I make films. And he goes, why don't you just find yourself a nice man?
So she's a gay filmmaker.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, Rose Troche. Give her a big round of applause. Welcome, Rose.
I did lie on that. Yeah, my parents did not want me to do anything in the arts. Hello, thanks for coming out today. I think I'm live with this and not with that. Yeah, thanks for being here. This is very exciting. The last time I was here in Sydney was when I was here with Go Fish, which was my first feature film. So it's been a while, but it's wonderful to be here, and thank you, everyone. Thank you for inviting me, and this is very exciting indeed. And I think what's actually really exciting is that you live in a country and in a city where people are willing to support you working in VR. I just want you all to know that that's kind of a wonderful, wonderful thing. We do not have that in the US. So some of you are going to get real lucky, unless I get there first. So whoever wants to get married and give me citizenship, I am still available. So I don't know why I keep on looking at Rose Troche intro. This is me. That's that slide. So basically, this is kind of just to tell you a little bit about myself. My early work is, I started very much in experimental film. And the reason I'm going to mention this is that it's going to come back up again kind of later, right? So I did a series called the Gabriella series, and I was very much against anything narrative. There is a narrative piece that I did prior to Go Fish that will not, I always tell my students sometimes when I teach, I'm just like, just because you made it doesn't mean anyone should see it. So that first one is a no-see. But here's a little bit of this is a little kind of moment of seeing sort of what this is. There's a little clip from a very early piece that I did.
As he led me to the car, we crossed the street and he made the comment, I'll shoot you, do you understand me? He was angry, he was very angry. His face was flushed. He said, if you give me any trouble at all, I'll shoot you.
That was one of the very first things that I did around sort of gay and lesbian issues, and that was actually a transcript from a man it was from a book called Entrapped, and in the 70s they used to, the police would go and bait gay men in clubs and then hit them with clubs later, so he was testifying. And so I used to work a lot with found footage and kind of stuff like that. So this was moving into something like Go Fish, I very much wanted to keep that experimental quality. And for anybody who's seen Go Fish, you know that there are things like, the interstitial bits of top spinning and cream going into coffee and all sorts of things. You don't understand why they're there. But to me, they were just about relationships, cream in the coffee. Okay, but yeah, there's a poster for it. That was the official poster. After that, I moved to London and I made a film called Bedrooms and Hallways. All of these are available on Netflix. And Bedrooms and Hallways was a comedy, a British comedy, and you'll see some familiar faces. Hugo Weaving went on to do The Matrix right after, and these two were in Rome together, which I found very funny because they played boyfriends in this, and then and now on Grey's Anatomy. Anyway, a lot of ensemble pieces. Then I did The Safety of Objects. It was after I did The Safety of Objects that I realized sort of that I didn't want to work at such a slow pace in terms of directing and in terms of working on my own craft. So I asked my agent to I said, you know, like, look, I want to direct more. I want to make more. So try to hook me up with some quality television programs. And obviously 6 Feet Under was one of those programs that was there at that time. And that was very fortunate to be my very first gig in television, which was an entirely different world for me. Even though Safety of Objects was an $8 million movie, it was still a very, very, very indie, very, very tough shoot. And so for me, it was one of the first times when I was just like, oh my God, money, 3 cameras, always a steady cam there. You know, like it was just like, you know, the sets were amazing. You know, everyone was, you know, the infrastructure was there, and that just felt like heaven to me. And then that led, very shortly after, I got offered 2 pilots for 2 different shows. One was called The Ranch, which was about sex workers in Nevada, legal sex working in Nevada. And then the other one was called Earthlings, which was about lesbians in Los Angeles. And I was just like, I think I know a little more about probably lesbians in Los Angeles than I do about prostitution in Nevada. But it was a very funny moment in my career where I was just like, hookers or lesbians? What has more legs? What can really be a show? So I picked the lesbians, and then did that for the next chunk of my life. So I did the pilot for that show, and that ran for 6 seasons, and maybe some of you have seen that one. I always love this poster because, at this point, all these actors are sort of like, I hate each other. No, they don't. But it's just funny that they have to go in there. Do I have to lick her face? I'm like, you know, I always think it's hilarious when they have that photo shoot day for the posters, and they're like, ugh, you know, I got waxed for this. And then poor Helena's like, I'll just hang on right here. It just cracks me up. It's just funny when and I love working on a show because you work with actors for a long period of time and you really get to know them and their sense of humor. I also did a pilot for another show that ran for 4 seasons called South of Nowhere, and was a consulting producer on this show, which is another show about gay kids in high school. Fluidity, let's call it. Something I've been interested in for a long time. It was around this point that I started to work on television, like episodes of television, Law and Order, which I think is a rite of passage when you live in New York, as I do. And you know, you have to do one of the Law and Orders. And we all want SVU. I don't know why. Weird. You know, or it's like a gay thing, the Mariska Hargitay gay thing, which I don't actually have. But you know, all my friends got really excited when I said I got that job, and they're like, "Oh, the original." So that was a real like. There was something that I started to realize in this area, which was that doing episodic television for hire was something that was sort of crushing my soul a little bit. And it was around this time that I made the decision to leave that and to start to kind of take a chance on myself, which meant a little bit at a certain age and after a certain level of success, kind of starting again at not 0, but anew, let's say. So I started working in web. And I did a short series called Rochelle for Rodrigo Garcia and John Avnett's channel, Wigs, with Roseanne Arquette, who I had worked with already on The L Word. Then I executive produced a very heterosexual show called Hunting Season, thus the poster. I'm kidding, it's a gay show. Executive produced that. That was a very fun session right there. And then I started working, I kind of had this moment where I'm just like, I'm gonna start doing short work again. I'm gonna do short work, and I'm gonna kind of see who I am as a filmmaker again. Kind of dig into this world. This was a piece that was commissioned by the new museum in the Chinatown New Museum in New York, which was just opening. They picked 12 filmmakers who lived in New York to make films that they thought were, you know, our sort of perception of Chinatown. And what I did with this was sort of kind of got back into my own identity as someone who is first generation, and sort of what happens when you sort of over-assimilate in a culture. When you do, like my father would call us his American kids, you know, like, because we were not as tied to the island as he wanted us, but you know, then again, this was the recipe for success in the US. So I kind of brought those ideas into this piece, where this woman's having her birthday and none of her children actually show up for it. Happy. So we're gonna move along. After that, I produced a film called Concussion, which was Stacy Passen's very first film. And this was really kind of an amazing process for me, because I was just like, it just kind of reinvigorated me in the world of independent filmmaking, which I really love. And kind of, in that aspect actually, got me rolling into a couple of other things, which is Elliot King is third. We made this right after right after we did Concussion. Stacy produced this for me, and this is a short film for PBS. This is online. It's called Future States. Well, Future States was a series, and this is imagining. I love they just love this title thing, and I'm like, I should have edited this part out. But this is an imagining of trans people in the future, and sort of brings up the question of identity and trans people who are trans being considered third in order to protect themselves. And what's really weird is that we're having this issue in the US a little bit right now around North Carolina and bathrooms and this whole ridiculousness which is going on to protect people. So this is available online if you ever wanted to see it. And then this leads me to Perspective, which is my first work in virtual reality. So the Perspective series, Shari Freelo, who is the New Frontier at Sundance, is sort of her brainchild, right? It was all of this stuff, all of the work that wasn't happening in feature filmmaking and in short filmmaking, in traditional sort of storytelling form. All of those things, she was sort of like, where do we put this stuff? There's a lot of people doing exciting work, amazing work. Where can we put all this? Oh, I know, let's make this New Frontier. Now this is gonna be a new section of Sundance where it's gonna be work that's like, I mean, who's gone to New Frontier? Who's had the, okay, I shouldn't ask that when we're so many thousands of miles away.
You should go, it's in February.
No, it's January, it's during the festival. Yeah.
It's not hard to go.
Yeah, and it's open all the time. It's like the one thing you really need a ticket to. And this thing has grown and grown. So what happened for me is that I'd been at Sundance in 2011, 2013, 14, 15, 16. And in that time, in 2011, I think was my first, no, 2013, I think was my first VR experience. And there's this long line and people are waiting to put the headset on and I'm just like, oh my God, what's this? And then I went and I did my first virtual reality experience. And it was kind of a piece that was sort of explaining what virtual reality was. And it had an interactive quality, which was that it had eye mapping. And so if you stared at something long enough, it would activate a hotspot. You would go into someone explaining what VR was, these different experts. And I was just like, mind officially blown. And I must have talked to Shari about it because Shari then, later that year, hooked me up with this man named Morris May, who runs a company called Specular Theory, and was a VisFX guy for a bunch of years. Was on Spider-Man, won like Academy Awards, and was just like, I'm done with this. I'm doing VR now. And the thing about Morris is that he had an idea for he wanted to do a story about sort of like American Beauty, the dinner table scene, something where there was like tension and this idea that we would use first-person storytelling, and that would be the most powerful way to use virtual reality, to really be in someone's shoes, right? And so I wrote the script for the dinner table piece. I didn't direct it, I just wrote it. Morris directed it, And it was, you know, it was good. And I felt like there were other things that we could do with this notion of first person in this immersive space. So I kind of said, these are the things that I would do. I would do 5, I gave sort of 5 different ideas. And then I said, look, I think this sexual assault piece is like kind of, it's very close to me. I would like to make this one. For the ideas, he agreed, and then Sundance also got on board with it. And we made the first piece, which is Perspective, the Party. And this piece is available, these pieces are available here to see if you'd like. And for me, this was a really important piece. This was, I live in New York, as I said, and there was this whole thing happening at Columbia University where a young woman was raped, and she was carrying her dorm room mattress around with her as a protest. And that was going on at the time. And this, for my own self, this was a very personal thing for me, because you know, for so many women, this has happened to them. You know, you're at a party, you get too drunk, and then you're like, surprise. And so this was a piece that I wrote and directed and produced, and Morris built. This was an amazing moment because there was one thing in this piece that I really wanted, which was that I wanted her to be able to look down her body at a certain point, right? And what I love about this medium is that, like, when that started, Morris was like, you know what? No, I don't. There's no way to do that. You know, I'm like, I want to hand hold. I want to like look down her body, and you know, like, and he's just like, I don't think we can do that. And by the time we shot it, which was like about 3 months later, he had built a camera where we could do that. And that's kind of the genius of working with people. I mean, I was talking to these guys over at Trigger, and I mean, it just like, I find it so exciting. Like, just solving those problems is like, you know, is very much a turn on for me. So by the time we got done with this, we had the camera, we had the support, and this piece is available. And you go through this experience. I wanted you to go through the experiences, both him and her. And you should see him first and then her second, right? And the perceptions are different depending on who you are in this experience. And there's something about this piece, though, that's like, you know, there's definitely a moral line drawn. Like, you know, if someone passes out, perhaps you shouldn't have sex with them. And I only say that because it brings me to my next piece, which is this year in 2016, we did a piece. I very much wanted to do a piece about police violence and a sense of this sort of conversation that's happening. I'm born and raised in Chicago, which is, I think we are officially the most violent city in the US, which is really disheartening to me. And I remember people when I was moving to New York saying, aren't you scared to move to New York? And I'm like, I'm coming from Chicago, like, you know, no, for both the snow and the violence, like, you know, and the wild racism that we have in Chicago. So this piece has always been in the back of my mind and really important to me. And it was really important to me to keep the conversation going around why is there violence? You know, how do we unpack all of this? How do we unpack, like, what is American history in a way? How do I show that bias on both sides is something to be considered? So this piece is a little bit more complex, I think, both sort of morally and ethically, and it really came with a lot of challenges for me as a person who was writing it. I think it's, you know, these are not documentary pieces. So there were a lot of interviews and a lot of with both police officers and with young people in the writing of this piece. And I think that I have a little. I said, hold up. This is. All right. So this is just to get to the side, because I know that we want to talk about like some sort of more technical things, which is, I know that you're seeing, this is the way I edit. So when I'm editing these pieces, I edit in 2D, and this is, you know, right eye, left eye, and sort of that's how I'm working, which I just kind of wanted to let you guys see that for a little bit. Now this is a rig where this is the first person. What we wanted to do, and this is not quite you know, I think it's important to try to innovate in the space. I really think it is. And sometimes with a piece like the Misdemeanor, it's like, you know, we're a little bit ahead, the ambition is a little bit ahead of where we are technically, just ever so slightly. And I really wanted to do live action, first person, moving, meaning I'm physically moving in a space, film. And that's a lot of stuff to pop onto one piece, you know? But in this piece is also, I'm sorry, not Sugar, but the piece takes place from the point of view of 4 different people. The 2 police officers and the 2 young men. So you get to see this sort of incident take place 4 different times. And it goes from, oh my goodness, yeah. It goes from, that went fast. It goes from, I thought you were saying 5 different times, but you're saying 5 minutes. So you see it 4 different times. It goes like 5 minutes, 4, 3, 2, 1. I mean, 4, 3. And that's how you should experience it. And when you're watching that piece, please watch Arroyo last. Okay, anybody who's watching that. So there's 4 different pieces. And that was really like, and one of the things about that piece is really showing how faulty a viewer we are, even when we're there as first person witnesses. And you'll see that when you see the piece. So it's sort of like, you know, it's this, you'll watch where your eye is, right? You can't see, the thing about 360 is that everyone, you know, you're never seeing a full space, right? It's always where your eye is. It's how we live in the world. And there's something really kind of amazing about how that's demonstrated in a piece like that. I think I just complimented myself weirdly. I didn't really, there's something really, I didn't mean that like that. And I wanted to say really quickly, now that I have to really move quickly, that part of why I'm here is to talk about how it affects my work that I do that's traditional, that's 2D, right? So I think that what's happened for me is sort of like, is really that there's a sense of experimentation and play more in my work that's 2D, that I think, you know, this is opened up. And Sugar is a series that I did. It's also online. It was released in March of 2016. And this is, it's on, oopsies, it's PBS. Sorry. And Sugar is a 5-part series, 5 different directors. I created characters and created character histories, worked with the actors to expand those histories because I wanted to work with people of color who mainly are playing thug number 1 or thug number 2, and in that way give them agency over their own characters. Then each person, each director, the next director would get the character histories, the last page of the script before theirs, and the last shot. And they got the last shot so that they would be able to seamlessly start me in the next edit right into the next piece. So if you go online, you'll be able to see this piece, the 5 parts of this piece. And it's about a woman who gets out of prison after 9 years. And it's the first 5 days of her life. And she's amazing. So that was that. And so then now more the VR work that's sort of in the future for me, which is SINFUL CYNTHIA is one of them, which is an animated VR series. And in this series, it's very much adult content, you guys, because you either come or die. It's a choose your own adventure, and that's what happens in each. So you only have 2 results. So it's up to you to choose what happens to you. So you either, and this is, and it's Ariel Schrag is an animator known in the U.S. And I worked with her on a thing called Potential. And anyway, it's kind of in this style. And the reason that I want to do animation is that it's really about, like, I'm very interested in the full 360 and controlling, kind of having the amount of play to see where your eye goes when you're creating that entire world or drawing in that entire world. So anyway, you can see that she's either has the option to, there's a little orgy happening back there, and a boner, animated boner. Okay, and then another series that I'm working on right now is called LGBTQIA, which is an episodic comedy series. And in this series, the whole point of this series is that I want to explore narrative making, I'm not saying filmmaking because it's not that, narrative making in the VR space. And so this is a platform in which to do that. So it's the conceit of this series is that is that it's use every trope possible. You know, there's like an episode that takes place underwater. There's an episode that is puppetmation. You know, there's like, I mean, it's kind of, it kind of allows itself to be anything. And so that's a fun series, and I'm casting that now and shooting the first 2 episodes very soon. And lastly, I just wanted to say, in terms of my next feature is called This Is Not Me. And again, it's really about experimentation. This is a memoir-esque piece, and it's really just taking, I shoot all the time. So I travel with cameras and I shoot everywhere I go. And what's happening is I'm taking that footage and creating a fictional character around that. Even though it's my life, it becomes his life. And my exes become his exes. And yes, they've agreed to be in it, a few. And oh, that also made me sound like, you know, just a few. And this is sort of, this is like a little, a teeny sort of.
I'm lying. I love doing this job, man. I love
in this,
doing
he's a
comedy.
comedian.
I can't do anything else.
And he travels all the time.
I tried to have a job. I did.
But it has this kind of.
I used to have a regular. Why are you laughing?
Sort of the traveling bits, the sort of the lonely traveling bits are all interstitial. This is actually supposed to be a funny piece.
But I had to get the fuck out.
Doesn't feel as funny.
The Matrix is scary, yo. You know what it is? There's too many rules when you got a job. Like I can't. I'm not a rule person. You gotta know.
I'm gonna keep on playing that. But that's like kind of gives you an idea. Oh, that's my desktop. I should explain that. I take a picture of every bed I sleep in. That's on a houseboat in India, but I kind of like that one. Did I make it on time? I made it on time. I don't know. I'm kind of proud of myself. And I never used this. That's a clicker, in case you're wondering. Okay. I think that's it. Yes.
The use of sound in the second piece.
Is this still on?
Yeah.
Yep, you're still on.
I didn't do, that's a very, very good question. And that was, for me, like one of the, I love sound and I love sound environments. And that was really, we did an Dolby Atmos mix on that piece. And that is just like the sort of the 360 sound. And it's an amazing, sound in the 360 space is just, it elevates a piece. It puts you in, it is so important in a piece like The Misdemeanor, because in The Misdemeanor, you're going from one body literally to another body, right? And I feel weird sitting alone. It's odd. Yeah, so you go from one person's body to another person's body. So literally, when we shot that piece, the thing about shooting 360 is that everybody's loved, right? So there's 5 characters, right? And when we're doing the piece, and that was a very funny piece to do because we were shooting in Bed-Stuy in New York, which is a you know, it's an area where there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of racial tension because it's an area that's gentrifying super fast. Like there's like a place that's like pizza and an attitude, you know, and then next door to like, you know, like a housing project, you know, and it's just, so there's already a tension in that area. And when we were rehearsing, because rehearsal is so very important in this space, right? And running everybody through it from top to bottom is how I work, even if there's cuts, right? I want everybody to have like a body memory of what it is, and to know it fully. So I don't do it like I do traditional film, which is like, you know, come in and do the scene, and then we'll do the next scene. So we had lavs on everybody, and then the background is live as well. So you can't like, you know, peas and carrots the background in. If they're yelling at the police officers in this piece, that is gonna be what's happening. So that team was amazing because there was a lot of sound cleanup, a lot of overlap because they're physically on top of each other almost, right? So my lav is like, you're in my lav. I might be even louder in your lav than I am in mine, right? And so there's a lot of cleanup on that. And then just a ton of Foley, like all, so that when you became that person, you would feel your clothes and your own movement, right? All of the rustling of your pants and the, you know, like, so that I would be able to sell you on becoming that person, right? That I would get over that kind of slight tech bump that we were having, which is like, you know, because the camera's a little bit higher up, right? In that rig, the camera's about this high up above someone's head. So the actors have to walk in a this manner, right? a little Nosferatu, you know, kind of, which almost makes you have your hands go Mr. Burns, but you know, like, but so you have to be like, okay, kind of fix yourself up and like get in your body. At the same time, you're wearing a whole rig. At the same time, you're like, hey, stop right there, you know, and have to try to have your body that can move still move. It's asking actors to do a lot, and I tend to work with actors who are not deep into the film or television space, because I find them more flexible in terms of the things that they have to do. And they can't, you know, you're having a scene where you're in conflict with someone, but you can't look in their eyes. You have to kind of keep it, oh wait, that's what, you know, you have to look into the camera, remember the camera's your eyes, right? So you have actors doing this a lot. What? Because they're drawn to your face, right? They want to be down here, and when you watch the piece, when you watch both pieces, you'll see some people make that error a couple of times. But this. Did you have any kind of split? What's that? Did you have any kind of split? Were you able to view any of it live? No. When I work, and I know, like we were talking about Lynette's piece, like Lynette had a remote unit, and that's a question, Gabo, like, you know, you guys probably have a feed, or you don't. I shoot blind as well. I shoot like I rehearse, and then I hide myself. In the Misdemeanor, you'll see me in the crowd. I get my ass across the street, and then I'm watching, and then I was like, we were joking that I should have been in a compost heap, like, you know, like really, so I could be like right there, or like, you know, in like a recycling bin with like 2 eye holes cut out, you know? Like, but that's like, you know, the level of...
Even without a headset?
No, I have cans on. Yeah, I have just my headphones. I mean, everybody. And in the party, our sound guy is literally like an extra sitting among people at the party. And I'm just like, you know, but it's funny because then you don't have like the, you know, 57-year-old sound guy. You kind of choose the one who's like the younger dude, because you're like the 50. You're like, why is that dude in the party? You know, it's creepy.
You just don't have the right look for the sounder we need.
Yeah, like bad enough I was there. You know, like, hey kids, what's up? You know.
Ruby, you want to hop down the middle there? Chase that microphone right down the middle there. Yeah. Introduce yourself as well.
Oh, hi, my name's Jed Malone. Thanks so much. That was such an inspiring presentation.
Oh, wow. I thought it was all over the place, but thank you.
It was great. Thank you. What sort of camera do you travel with, please, and what sort of editing platform do you use?
Okay, I thought you were gonna ask what cameras we use on this, which is like more so is makes it. Oh, also what I wanted to tell you guys is that there's a music video also online that you should watch. It's on YouTube. It's called The Donnies, The Amy's Runaround. You can just put in The Donnies Runaround, and it should, we tried to use it on one of the phones, it should GPS track, you know, like you guys have watched content, 360 content. But you should take a look at that, because that's a fun piece, as opposed to like the downer pieces that the other ones I do. So yes, so what
Quick tools question, editing software, cameras you travel with?
Yes, so the camera that I travel with, I use Premiere for most stuff, and the cameras that I travel with are, I travel with a Blackmagic Pocket, which is, I just love it. And I travel with a Theta, and I travel with a GoPro, which I don't use that often, the GoPro, but the GoPro is kind of discreet, and I kind of carry it in case I want to do certain things. They're all like they all serve different purposes. So I'm constantly, like I lost my Theta in the waterfall a couple of weeks ago. I had to go chase it down the waterfall. You know, I had it on a monopod, and I was like putting it in the water, and it got slapped off, even though anyway, but it's fun, yeah. And so that's not anything that you're gonna see in an experience, because I think that would make you vomit, because it's just like bobbing through.
We've got another question over here. Thank you, sir. Introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, hi, my name's Yan. How's it going? For the second perspective piece, how did you deal with motion sickness and nausea when the camera's moving?
There's a lot of stabilization that goes on. In both pieces. So in the party, I really wanted you to have that sense of, unfortunately, I did purposely want you to have a sense of nausea. I wanted you to get on the edge just like she was, because I think that she is really, there's a visceral experience there. With the Misdemeanor, that's just par for the course because of the moving camera. And one of the things, and we'll all get much better at, whether you believe it or not, we'll get much better at, and our bodies will get much better at being in that space and acclimate more as we see more content. But you'll start to learn how to be a viewer who, there's a very nauseating moment when he goes down to pick up his bag. He goes, hey, I'm not done with you, right? If you're not ready to go down with him, if you're not looking where he looks, basically, then if you resist the motion, it'll be a more sickening process than if you just try to go and be that person. And I think we'll learn more how to occupy like a body. Like, you know, I just saw the Bjork piece and I'm like, I found myself, you know, kind of climbing inside her body and walking with her, you know, like, I don't know, there's like, it's a weird, and then I was thinking about the strange intimacy of that.
Two more quick ones if you want, if got a couple more questions.
I'm a Gemini.
I've got a question about post-production. How do you...
That's a Morris question.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I edit, but then I kind of...
But how do you give notes? You know, how can you kind of get a good understanding of what's happening at that point in time?
I would say that, like, you know, what was really fun again was doing the sound mix on the Misdemeanor was one of my favorite things to do, and it was very intricate and very, like I said, like, you know, we just built the entire sound world, and even the breath. I went in and we kind of looped breath. We did the heartbeats that occupy the space. We resonated sound in your head. You know how, like, when you hear yourself and you're like, do I sound like that? It's like, yes, you do. But inside your head, you sound lower and more vibrating, right?
Yeah.
We did all of that inside. So when you're leaving your body, your voice starts to sound different, right? When I switch bodies. So there's all of that goes into something like that. And basically, I'm editing it in 2D.
Yeah.
Then I see the mock-up in 3, like a loose kind of stitch up to see if that's working or not. In this piece, I'm not cutting, you know, like the thing I really love and admire about a lot of pieces is the ability to cut from like one scene to the other. You know, like God was going to come up here and talk, and like his pieces are beautifully edited, and with things like this, with action moving, I was really trying and spent a lot of time trying to figure out the best way to edit. But since I don't know exactly where your eye's going to be, I can only try to either guess that it's going to be here and turn the sphere so that, you know, but instead I just chose to kind of go and put blacks between. Yeah. But that's also something that for me, I'm very much exploring in storytelling, which is like, you know, the process of editing.
Well, I think we've all learned a lot today. Please thank Rose.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Rose.